Xhaka has the greatest redemption story in football history. Just 3 years ago, he had his bags packed with a contract ready to sign for another club after being booed off the pitch, swearing at fans and promising he would never play for the club again. But Arteta has completely revived his career and he's now one of the first names on the team sheet in an Arsenal side challenging for the title and a fan favourite with his own song. So how was all this possible? Xhaka went through a career-ending injury, a World Cup victory and a failed start in Germany before making his big move to Arsenal. Nothing about Xhaka's career so far has been easy. Granit was born in Basel, Switzerland in 1992. When Granit and his older brother were growing up, they were both obsessed with football. They were always pushing each other to improve. They both joined their local team, Concordia Basel, as soon as they could walk. Early on, it was very clear that Granit was a natural leader. His first coach tells a story about Granit packing his brother's training bag for him despite being younger. When Granit was 10, he and his brother were invited to join the FC Basel Academy. Basel is the biggest club in Switzerland and they regularly compete in the Champions League. They only accept the best young players in the country. When Granit was progressing through the academy, it was clear that his brother was a lot more talented than he was. The Basel coaches would often tell him he would be lucky to have a career playing in the second division of Swiss football. At 15 years old, Granit's career was almost ended by an ACL injury. He was out for 8 months and when he returned, he was so scared of re-injuring his knee that he couldn't play with full intensity. His performances suffered. His coaches and family were telling him he should probably think about a career outside of football. One of his coaches even said it was a shame that he was on the pitch. But Granit isn't the type of person to quit or give up. You'll see this theme throughout his career. He always stays and fights. He continued to work hard in training and develop the confidence to trust his knee. By the time he was 16, he was playing in the Basel reserve team. At 17, Granit went into the Under-17 World Cup, telling fans to pack enough clothes for the final because they were going to win. Just to put this into context, Switzerland's Under-17 team hadn't even qualified for the World Cup for over 24 years, and Granit believed they could go all the way and win the tournament. I think we both know where this is going. His confidence paid off and Switzerland won the Under-17 World Cup for the first time in their history. Xhaka made his debut for Basel in a Champions League qualifier against Hungarian side Debrecen when he was 18. He came on in the 88th minute and scored 2 minutes later to win the game 2-0. In his first season, Basel won Switzerland's first division and in his second season, they won a league and cup double. There was a lot of hype surrounding this young, talented leader that was tearing up the Swiss First Division, and in the summer of 2012, Borussia Mönchengladbach spent €8.5 million, making him the second biggest transfer in the club's history. Mönchengladbach had just managed an impressive 4th place finish in the Bundesliga, but they lost some key players that summer and were looking like they could fall back into a relegation fight. When Xhaka arrived in Germany at 19 years old for such a huge fee, the expectations around him were high. But after a couple of games, he found himself on the bench and sometimes not even in the squad. The Gladbach fans were disappointed that Xhaka wasn't living up to the expectations. After only 6 months in Germany, with the move not going the way he hoped, he had an offer to join Italian side Lazio. He was complaining to his dad and said that he wanted to leave when his dad stopped him mid-sentence and said,
He said to me, "Shut up. This is not the way. You can walk away," he told me. "There is the door, please." But to walk away, everyone does. But to be strong and to work more than others, this is the difficulty.
In an interview, Xhaka said that he wanted to prove to the fans that it wasn't a mistake for Mönchengladbach to sign him, and he earned back his spot in the team by being the hardest worker in training. 7 years later, history would repeat itself, with Xhaka set to leave Arsenal with an offer on the table from another club, but we'll get to that soon. In the 2014-15 season, Mönchengladbach came third in the league, which meant they qualified for the Champions League for the first time in the club's history. Xhaka was one of their best players and was named in the Bundesliga Team of the Season, as well as being given the captaincy, but he was starting to pick up red cards and showing a level of recklessness to his game. In the summer of 2016, Arsene Wenger brought the 23-year-old Swiss international to Arsenal for £35 million. Since joining Arsenal, the fans hadn't really warmed to Xhaka. He was prone to unnecessary red cards, gave away ridiculous penalties and had very inconsistent performances. They were yet to see the highly rated £35 million midfielder they had signed from Germany. But what was about to happen would be the biggest public fallout between a player and fans I've ever seen. Before we can talk about what happened against Crystal Palace, we have to look at the build-up to the game so we can get a feel for why it happened. At the start of the season, Unai Emery allowed the players to vote for the club's captain, and they voted for Xhaka because of the leadership abilities that he was showing in training and around the club. Fans were shocked by this announcement because they felt they hadn't seen these leadership qualities on the pitch, and in their eyes, Xhaka's consistent red cards and stupid mistakes were the opposite of what a good captain should be. To make matters worse, Arsenal didn't have a great start to the season, and Xhaka wasn't playing well either. You see, since joining Arsenal, Xhaka had been playing as a defensive midfielder, either as a 2 in a 4-2-3-1 or on his own in a 4-3-3. And this definitely wasn't his strongest position. In fact, when he'd started at Mönchengladbach and was having so many problems, that was because he was being used as a DM. Xhaka's best position has always been as a box-to-box midfielder, someone that doesn't need to make last-ditch tackles. The problems for Xhaka started in the fourth game of the season against Spurs. Of course, the North London derby is massive, and any mistakes in this game won't go down well with the fans. Xhaka gave a penalty away in the first half and Harry Kane scored to make it 2-0. Arsenal ended up coming back to draw the game, but Xhaka's mistake was not forgiven by the fans. In the following game against Watford, Arsenal were 2-0 up, but allowed Watford back into the game and dropped 2 points, with the game finishing 2-2. In the next game against newly promoted side Aston Villa, Arsenal went down to 10 men in the first half, and by the 60th minute they were losing the game 2-1. Xhaka was brought off to some boos from a section of the Arsenal fans, but to make things worse for him, after he came off, Arsenal looked a lot better and mounted a comeback, finishing the game 3-2, even with one less player on the pitch. But the game before the Crystal Palace clash was against another newly promoted side, Sheffield United. After a mediocre performance, they lost the game 1-0. So Arsenal weren't having a great start to the season, their new captain wasn't performing, and he'd already been booed off the pitch with fans giving him online abuse. This all led to the game against Crystal Palace. Arsenal were cruising 2-0 up by the 10-minute mark, but as was becoming the norm, they conceded twice and let Palace back into the game. In the 61st minute, Emery brought Xhaka off for Saka to try and get the winning goal, and when the number 34 was held up, the fans in the stadium started to cheer Xhaka's departure. Xhaka reacted badly to what he felt was unjustified abuse from the fans, but walked off the pitch instead of jogging. The fans wanted a quick substitution so they could try to get the winning goal. The Emirates erupted into a chorus of boos as Xhaka continued to walk off the pitch, wasting more time. Xhaka chucked his captain's armband on the floor, took his shirt off and chucked that on the floor too, and then swore at the fans twice on his way down the tunnel. Within 10 minutes, he'd left the stadium, not even waiting to apologise to his manager or teammates in the dressing room. Fans were rightly furious, but what was truly disgusting was the online death threats that he and his family received after the game. Xhaka swore that he would never wear the Arsenal shirt again, and in January he had his bags packed with a contract from another club that just needed to be signed. When he was ready to leave Mönchengladbach 7 years ago, it was his dad that told him to stay and fight for his place. But this time, even his dad was telling him it was time to go. It looked like it was the end of Xhaka's Arsenal career. What happened next is possibly one of the greatest redemption stories of any footballer. Emery was sacked and Arteta replaced him. He saw Xhaka as a key figure in his rebuild and had 2 meetings with him to try and convince him to stay. Xhaka liked Arteta's vision, and just like in Germany, he decided that he didn't want to leave the club on a low. The process of winning a fanbase back after such a huge upset was never going to be easy, but slowly Xhaka rebuilt his career at Arsenal. Arteta was off to a great start after winning the FA Cup in his first few months in charge. Xhaka had a good performance in the final and was pairing up well with Dani Ceballos. One of the biggest improvements to Xhaka's performances is definitely his slightly altered role under Arteta. Playing alongside Thomas Partey in midfield allows Xhaka a licence to push forward and means he's never having to make last-ditch tackles. His tackles per 90 has gone down, and so has his fouls per 90. He's operating as the engine to the Arsenal side rather than the defensive midfielder, which has led to a drop-off in red cards under Arteta. He's not been shown a red so far this season. It's also worth mentioning the All or Nothing documentary. For the first time, fans could see his leadership qualities on the training pitch and in the dressing room. It was hard not to like Xhaka after watching the documentary. The 2022-23 season so far has been one of Arsenal's best in a very long time, and at the halfway point they're still pushing for the title, which is a credit to Arteta and the team he's built. Xhaka has been a key figure in that team. The Arsenal fans have been enjoying Xhaka's performances, and I think it's fair to say he's won most of the fans over, and he even has his own song. I don't think anybody could have predicted this redemption 3 years ago. I've really enjoyed looking into the career of Granit Xhaka. If you've made it this far, then a like would really help me out, and if you're interested in these types of videos, I release a new one every week. If you're an Arsenal fan, then let me know what you think of Xhaka's comeback story in the comments. I look forward to reading your responses. Another player that's had an incredible redemption recently is Marcus Rashford. For his rise, fall and rise again, click the video on screen.